So when you come for an interview, you're probably going to be asked, tell us more about yourself, why are you interested in optometry, tell us more about your experiences. And as you start to describe your experiences, you're going to talk about the different doctors you have shadowed, the different specialties, and immediately, and that's why it's so important for you to think like an interviewer, to think like a member of the admissions panel. You're going to be describing your experiences, and immediately the interviewer is going to start subtracting the different specialties that you're mentioning from the total universe of optometric specialties. So here is the entire universe of optometry, and you have shadowed vision therapy or pediatrics. And these are important, but still just a subpart of the entire scope of practice. So probably the follow-up question to that is going to be, all right, wonderful, you have shadowed all these doctors in these different specialties. What else do you know about the profession? And that's when students get into trouble. They get into trouble when their knowledge about the profession is limited to their experiences, and they haven't done research on the side to really try to understand what the entire scope of practice is. So I cannot emphasize enough the importance for you to exploring the profession, not only based on your experiences, but going beyond and doing your own research, so that when you come, you're a candidate who has a very broad view of the profession that's actually going to be your future profession. From traveling around the country talking to prospective candidates, I understand that the interview is probably the most anxiety-producing part of the admissions process. You are actually being tested. You are no longer behind papers. Now we are no longer only looking at your transcripts and essays that you have had maybe months to prepare. Now it's the real deal. We are in a face-to-face interaction. It's a high-stake interaction when you have to really bring everything you have to the table. And a lot of people get highly anxious about it. What we are going to try to do is to really say here, if we can, that you don't really need to get that anxious. My philosophy has always been that if you have done your homework, if you have prepared really well, and if you have done what is expected of you, and you have met those standards that, as we talked before, is just part of the game, you're going to be just fine. What you're going to have is actually a conversation between adults, and you're going to be sharing the wonderful things you have done. But how can we prepare better for it? I mentioned before, doing your homework. What does that mean? Doing your homework, again, is getting good grades, doing well in a standardized test, having the experience that we expect from applicants, being engaged on an on-campus community or off-campus community, displaying your leadership qualities and skills. And it's also important that you learn how to talk about these things. So my challenge to you is, again, to think like an interviewer. Try to anticipate where the question is going to be asked of you. The first question that for sure is going to be asked of you is, why are you choosing this profession? I strongly encourage you to make a list of maybe a 3-bullet point list of the reasons why you're choosing this profession. And why do I recommend a 3-bullet point list? Because that will allow you to, first of all, more easily remember what the points are, and then will also allow you to go one by one, and will also make sure that your answers are concise, that you don't give long-winded answers that never end. So we talked about the importance of you trying to anticipate some of the questions that are going to be asked of you. Again, why are you choosing this profession? What are your shadowing experiences? What else do you know about the profession? Then they're probably going to ask you questions about your leadership potential. What is it that you do for fun? One thing that I recommend that you do is, again, taking the perspective of the interviewer when you're addressing questions. What is it that they expect from you? What is it that they probably want to hear from you? What are they expecting from that particular question? How can you provide more information that will allow them to make inferences about your future behavior? So a good example is when you're asked, for example, how do you manage stress? Try to answer the question with the interviewer's perspective in mind. What they're asking is not only how you have managed stress in the past, but basically what they're saying is, hey, listen, this is a very tough program. Can you handle it? So the best way to answer this question is not by simply saying, oh, when I am stressed, I go for a run or I play the piano, but to give actual examples of times in your life when you had to endure a lot of stress and you were going through difficulties. And by using these strategies that you're going to share, you were able to successfully manage it. Also, think about questions that can be only asked of you because these are your experiences. So for example, if you didn't do well in a couple of classes, the committee members may ask you what happened, and you have to be able to explain it. And as a rule of thumb, I always tell my students, anytime you are asked tough questions, and again, it's not a walk in the park, it is an interview, and they want to make sure that you're going to do well in our program. So these tough questions may be asked, but never see this as an attack. Never see this as the committee members pointing out your weaknesses, but do see it as an opportunity for you to explain. You're here to explain, never to defend. So try to anticipate what are some potential questions that may be asked. If you took the OAT and you did really well in some areas, but you didn't do so well in other sections, expect to be asked, why do you think you struggle with, let's say, in physics, for example? Okay, and again, it's an opportunity for you to explain, because if you want it or not, they will come up with their conclusions behind closed doors. So this is your opportunity to drive the conversation. Also, other experiences you may have had that are unique to you. Once I was working with a student who did an internship in China, and so I was coaching her, so tell me more about your externship in China. And she was telling me how great it was, and she learned so much, and she realized that here in the United States, we are so lucky because we have so much access to healthcare, and they in this rural community that she visited, they didn't, and she stopped there. Like, all right, we have to develop this a little further. This is not very reflective. It's kind of shallow. We have to go a little deeper on it. So I started asking more probing questions, and then she started telling me that one big issue that she observed there was the fact that the patients were going home and now they had internet access, maybe at an internet cafe or even at home, and they were searching the diseases that they had, the issues that they had, and they were actually now having access to all these different types of treatments or knowledge about these different types of treatments, and they were going back to their doctors and they were challenging their doctors with that new information that they had. And of course, that was creating a lot of friction between patients and doctors. Now, she had my attention. I was listening to her. There was something interesting, something different, something that only she could have shared with me and nobody else. So in any experience that you have, it's about being reflective and really going deeper in the meaning of that experience to you and in what you have learned from it. So my recommendation to you is that you anticipate every question that's going to be asked of you, write them down on a piece of paper, and try to, in a bullet point format, think of 2 to 3 points in how to answer that particular question. And again, there are stock questions out there that you can find on the internet. And there are also those questions that are very unique due to your own experiences. And you want to make sure you cover them all. This is an exercise that can also help you not only with the interview, anticipating questions for the interview, but also when you are drafting your essay. When you go to OptumCAS, there will be a question that is common to every single student and to every single school that you have to answer. What inspires you to become an optometrist? What are your future goals? So here is an outline of what this essay is about. I recommend that you break down each topic, and for each topic you start brainstorming what are possible answers that you would have for each of these particular sections.